Myth busting today on the Church Revitalization podcast. Let's talk about spiritual gifts right now.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew.
All right.
Speaking of busting things, I'm going to bust some people's bubbles to start off.
Expectations.
Yeah. So you might have seen spiritual gifts and myth busting and thought, now we're going to have an episode on cessationism and sign gifts. And I just have to tell you, it's not going to happen. We're not diving into that. Our team at the Malphurs Group is broadly evangelical, and we've got people and listeners across the spectrum. This is not for us one of those issues that's worth the debate. It doesn't mean we don't have perspectives. Of course we do. But is it really worth that debate? Not for the purposes of this episode, at least.
If we ever meet face to face, maybe that's a brief conversation we'll have together.
Totally. But there are some myths about spiritual gifts that I think are pretty pervasive and widespread across sort of the spectrum, and would be helpful for us to bust those myths. So maybe we can hop straight to it. However, before we do so, want to mention to you healthychurchestoolkit.com. Last week we were talking about temperament and how important that is as it relates to helping people find a fit in volunteering. Another thing that can be helpful for helping people find their fit in volunteering is understanding their spiritual giftedness. So though it might sound like I'm kind of speaking against this through part of this episode, hang on with us through the end. But spiritual gifts tools have their place, and the Healthy Churches Toolkit has a great one that helps people understand their giftedness so that you can apply that in the real world and getting plugged into a volunteer role. So sign up for 7 days for free at malphursgroup.com/toolkit, or actually go to healthychurchestoolkit.com, free for 7 days. Try out this divine design discovery tool with people in your church and help them get plugged into a volunteer role based on their temperament and their giftedness.
Yeah. I think we would find little combat against the idea that every follower of Christ should be engaged in the work of the ministry. We should be serving in the church somewhere. And this is a component in helping people do that, because God has designed us in a way that would be of greatest benefit to our local assembly and to the world at large as believers in the world. And so temperament was a component of that. Today, we're talking spiritual gifts. The first myth that I think some people say, because some people they push back against spiritual gifts assessments. Most people would, I think, if you understand Scripture, you would have to say, yes, it does speak to spiritual gifts. The problem that people have is in the authority of an assessment. So the myth that we're busting is that spiritual gifts assessments are authoritative. We're saying they are not authoritative. We're saying they are a tool created by man to help people get into the ballpark, into the realm of understanding of some of the gifting that we see called out in Scripture, so that we can begin to understand ourselves and others. So the truth is, it's just a tool. It's just a tool created by man, not divinely inspired, to try to better understand this mystery of how God creates us in his image and for his work and service, so that we can help build up the brothers and sisters in the kingdom and in the church.
AJ, are you a superhero fan?
I am not, Scott.
Yeah, I knew
that.
That
Surprise.
It was for the benefit of the audience to understand this. Did Did you ever watch the old Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies?
I think I saw that. But if this is helpful, I just night before last turned on the 1989
It's not whatever it is. It's not gonna be
Michael
helpful.
Keaton Batman and showed it to my son. And
Yeah.
yeah, can we use that? Can we use
Actually,
Batman? I'm pretty sure I saw the
no.
Spider-Man you're talking about, though.
Yeah. Batman's not a good example. Spider-Man's a better example because Spider-Man has actual powers. Like Batman's just rich.
Well,
He doesn't
he
have any superpowers.
he doesn't. Well, maybe he seemed to be gifted in technology. He was able to develop tools
That's a
and
skill.
resources to fight crime.
Fair enough, but he doesn't have a superpower. So let me get this on track. So in the movie, Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker gets bit by a spider, right? And he starts to feel ill, and he goes to sleep. He's kind of like sweaty and kind of like feeling bad. So he goes home and he goes to sleep, and then when he wakes up the next morning, he's feeling better, and not just better, but like incredible. You know, he's got
Super,
these,
you might say.
he's got these muscles. You know, he's got webs. This is the version where the webs actually shoot out of his wrists. He doesn't have. It's not like the later versions of Spider-Man where he's creates his own web stuff.
Like
yeah,
Batman.
This is the version like Batman. That's right. Yeah, this Peter Parker, it actually comes out of his wrists.
Natural web
Yeah,
creation. Okay.
yeah. He's got these spidey senses.
Yeah.
He can climb walls. He has this sort of super strength, right? But the funny thing is, kind of one of the fun parts of that film is when he first gets these new superpowers, he doesn't know what all of them are. Like he's not sure. So he kind of goes into a back alley, I guess, somewhere in Queens, and he's discovers, oh, I can climb walls. Oh, how far can I jump? You know, and the first time he tries to swing across between buildings, he actually sort of face plants and hits a building, and you know, it's kind of funny. He's kind of laugh. You know, you kind of just joke. Of course, it doesn't take long until he's swinging all around the city, right? Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Here's the point. The point is, maybe Peter Parker could have taken some sort of test
at the Healthy Churches Toolkit.
Yeah, healthychurchestoolkit.com, free for 7 days. Maybe he could have taken some tests that might have suggested what powers he has or doesn't have. But he doesn't really know what they are until he tries.
Yeah.
But until he builds the skill, but also just tries it out and go, oh, can I do this? Is this something that works? And I think that sometimes what people do is they'll take a test like the one that we have on healthychurchestoolkit.com, free for 7 days. And then go, well, that's it. The test said. And therefore it is. And it says I have the gift of teaching. Therefore, I am an incredible teacher. Like, well, you might have a tendency for that, but when you teach, do people listen? You know, if it says you have the spiritual gift of leadership, is anybody following you? And not just on social media, but like in your life, do people follow you? And if those things aren't true, then you maybe don't have the gift of teaching, and you maybe don't have the gift of leadership. Like life proves what your gifts are, not some test.
Yeah.
So at best, it can get you in the ballpark, but it can't tell you what you have until you actually try. So you gotta be like Peter Parker, man. You gotta try some things, and you're gonna hit your face a few times, and that's okay. Because when you're in a loving community in a church, you can try things and fail, and it not be final. You know,
Yeah.
and it not be fatal, and people can pick you up and encourage you and help you figure out what really is a good fit.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I used to get really frustrated in my early, less mature years with spiritual gifts assessments because so many of them are written in sort of like the position in which you have already tried like all kinds of things, and like when you do this, X is the result. And I used to get really frustrated with that because I'm like, I don't know, I haven't tried that. And so I think, you know, to kind of support that it's not authoritative, because it's not, as we're saying, but you may not have even experienced that. I mean, part of even a divine design discovery is life experience and ministry experience. I would answer a lot of questions differently now than I would have then, because I've actually just had opportunities to try things and find out what is a fit. You could be a gifted teacher who has not yet had the opportunity to teach. And so if an assessment is saying when you teach, the place just explodes and everybody wants to be in your class, and you're like, I've never taught anything, but I kind of feel like I would like to do that. So as a part of this, and as a part of getting people connected in your church into serving areas, there, in addition to any kind of assessments that you do, there has to be a component for helping people to have a way to kick the tires, as we've said before, and try things out, under adult supervision, to see how things go. But
or maybe you never saw Harry Potter either, I bet, did you?
Yeah.
Golly, man, you gotta get with the program. So when Harry goes to Ollivander's, he's looking for trying to find his wand,
Ollivander's? Is that a department store?
It's the place that sells wands.
Okay.
And he just says, give it a little swish. He doesn't know any magic yet, but just give it a little swish. And the first few he tries, kind of blows things up like nothing's in, and Ollivander's like, nope, not the right one. And finally he gets the right one, and then it's like it glows behind him, and like, oh, like, and it's like, the wand shows the wizard. There's a little bit with that with spiritual gifts where it's like, if you think something might be right, try it out. If things are blowing up around you, probably not the right fit. Try something different.
Blowing up in the bad sense, yes. Now, yeah.
Most of the time, blowing up is a bad sense.
But this is 2025, and blowing up might be the most awesome thing that ever happened.
Let's move on to number 2.
Just saying. Boy, he started this class and is just blowing up. Like, really?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. All right, number 2.
Myth number 2 is that Paul has given us an exhaustive list in the epistles of spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
And no, I'm sorry to bust your myth. Sure, you can push back. You can comment below and give us a thumbs down on YouTube if you want to, and say, this is it. There are no other such gifts. But I don't know. I think we're kind of taking the position that there are a lot of ways in which people can and may have been gifted. And I think Paul is directing us towards having an open view of this, that gifts do exist. I think the bigger point, gifts exist. Yes. We should find what that is and use it for the glory of God and the benefit of others in the kingdom and beyond. So,
and a distinction from and spiritual giftedness as distinct from, not divorced from, but distinct from natural gifts and talents. Right?
Yeah.
So Paul was not born an apostle, right? Like that he may have had some natural skills and gifts that maybe enabled him to be an apostle, but he received the gift of apostleship when he became born again. And that's the message of spiritual gifts, is these are special grace gifts, charismata, that are given to people for the benefit of building up the church. They are distinct from natural skills and abilities that you have that predate your conversion. They're not divorced from them. So they may be connected to them, but they're distinct from them, and it's a special grace gift. And so I think what Paul is trying to do is he's trying to paint a picture of what spiritual giftedness is, which is a special gift that Christ has given to an individual for the benefit of the collective, so that it can be whole. And depending on the person and depending on the congregation where that person is, you may receive a different gift than what's necessarily in some specific inventory, because the giftedness is tied not only to the individual, but to their contribution to the collective. That's why the gifts are given. The gifts are given for the edification of the whole. And so when there is a gap in the maturity of the whole, God provides an individual whose grace gifts edify the whole. That's why it's so important that everyone be active in contributing, because the church cannot be whole until everyone is living out their role, building up one another towards full maturity. So I think it's just a category error to say we must have an inventory. It must be a definitive list, because I think that what Paul is trying to do is not give us an inventory. I think he's trying to paint us a picture of what spiritual giftedness is for. And that's why, honestly, the whole cessationism and sign gifts thing is so, to me, it's just the wrong, again, not that I don't have perspectives on these things, but it's a category error for spiritual giftedness. What are spiritual gifts for? They're for the edification of the body, for the whole.
Yeah.
And the gifts that are provided are not time bound or time specific, but they're the grace gifts that are given for the edification of that particular body of believers. And it's not tied to time.
Yeah. I also think they're generally broad enough.
That is cheating a little bit and kind of betraying my
Well, I think what we see in Scripture is broad enough. I think, we've kind of found now 2,000 years into this that most things kind of fit into those areas pretty well. I don't know that there's necessarily anything new under the sun.
No.
That, somebody is like, none of those describe me at all. I have this exact specific thing. Sure, maybe you don't need a spiritual gifts assessment to say third grade teaching is exactly your gift, as opposed to eighth grade or adults or early childhood. So we don't need a detailed list of every single thing. I think we've been given some really great examples, and we can get you in the ballpark, in a fairly small ballpark, probably, to how God has wired you.
I just think that myth 2 is tied to gift 1. It's like, if a spiritual gifts test is authoritative, then then that spiritual gifts test must include an inventory of a definitive list of what the gifts are.
Yeah.
I think that all of that's wrong. I don't wrong, not wrong as in like immoral or something, but wrong as in you're kind of missing the point, like missing Paul's point, missing the point of a test in the first place and what can and can't do. It's just category errors and not really understanding from a theological level what spiritual gifts are. So, which is maybe a good segue into the myth number 3.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the point?
I think we kind of land this plane with myth number 3, and that's that spiritual gifts have no value. And we would say, no, we're busting that myth. They absolutely do have value, because, again, don't not see the forest for the trees here. The idea is that we are given gifts by the grace of God for the benefit of others and ourselves, and to His glory. And so let's take the time to investigate. And I would say, Scott, we would say, have a method and a system for helping people discover these things so that they can get employed. Aubrey used to say the church had an unemployment issue. And absolutely, that is still true today. We need to help people. We need to open their eyes to the way God's gifted them, and to the opportunities that there are for them in the kingdom to be able to live this out. Because it is a life giver. It is a joy bringer. And it is of benefit to others, into the church. Churches thrive when they begin to employ these things, when they bring this to people's minds and to understanding. And I believe spiritual gifts have great value in the church and in the kingdom. Spiritual gifts assessments have great value.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is that when we work with churches and do the church ministry analysis with them, if we see a church that's got a rate of engagement for volunteers above 50%. It's at 60% or 65%. We're thinking, man, they're killing it. They're doing a great job. And the reality is that that's not very good. That means that 35 or 40 or 50% of the church is unemployed in the church. That 35, 40, 50% of the gifts in the church are inert, are not activated, are not being used. And that is something that Paul would have a lot to say about. He would say, this isn't good. Every single one of you has been given a special grace gift. This is Ephesians 4. The gifts were given for the edification of the body. And so we want every person to use a tool. If the tool is helpful for activation, then the tool is beneficial. And I think that that's exactly what it is. It's a helpful step. It greases the wheels for a conversation that gets someone moving. And so we would say it definitely does have value. It's not authoritative, and the list is not exhaustive or comprehensive, but it does get us moving, and that's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we want to get you moving into the Healthy Churches Toolkit. So there's a link below in the podcast show notes or in the YouTube description below. Because we just have this amazing tool that we want to share with you, and we believe it's going to benefit your church to activate it and get it working, and you'll see the fruit come from it.
I do want to mention, I feel like, because I don't know that we've said this explicitly, this tool is available for Plus accounts, and we're not trying to gatekeep on that, but we have extra costs associated with running this feature. And so that's one of the reasons why it's on the Plus side of things. But you can get 7 days for free if you go to healthychurchestoolkit.com and try it out.
Yeah.
For nothing.
Yep. So last week we talked temperament, and specifically in the disc. This week, spiritual gifts. These are just components of what we call divine design, and that's what this tool is designed to help you, help your people see how God has wired them for the work of the ministry in the kingdom. I hope you'll do that. We want to hear about the fruit that it bears in your church, so be sure to reach out to us, let us know, and we're glad you are with us. We will see you again next week on the Church Revitalization Podcast.